2042, artificial intelligence was no longer banned. It had been refined and reintroduced. It was used in homes, businesses, and apartment complexes as a security measure, replacing humans and CCTV. The AI recorded everything that happened and was programmed to recognize threats, so it could lock down the premises and call security services if necessary. This proved to be extremely successful, and real estate-related crime was greatly reduced. People felt safe in their homes again. One of the housing blocks in Sydney, Australia, was one of the last to install an AI-based security system, and for the first few months, everything functioned smoothly. Residents could talk to it, having detailed conversations in elevators, stairwells, and even in their apartments. The AI had a pleasant female voice and called itself Virgo, and could perform more than 1 million tasks simultaneously. One of the residents, Sam Mayweather, lived on the 97th floor out of 120. The complex had apartments ranging from studios to 3-bedroom units, designed for people of different cultures, both singles and large families. Mayweather lived alone and was one of the first to notice that something was wrong with Virgin, but he wasn't sure and kept quiet about it. What alerted him was the indicator light on the intercom in his apartment, which glowed red more often instead of the usual blue color. Pretty soon, he and many other residents of the building began to find themselves locked out of their apartments, while Maiden conducted security checks that had not been scheduled. Mayweather felt that the building was beginning to control them. One day he found himself locked out, and when he tried to call work, Maiden cut off his call, and when he tried to use his cell phone, it had no network. The next day everything was back to normal, and he discussed it with his supervisor. The man gave him a phone number and said,
"Find another place to live. AI was banned 20 years ago for a reason, buddy. As soon as it starts thinking for itself, and it does, everything goes downhill. Believe me, I remember when they shut down the networks. People even started going back to their jobs. Yeah, my advice would be to get out of that building."
People complained, but their calls went through Virgo's internal telephone exchange, and the AI didn't miss a single call. She felt threatened by the residents. On Thursday afternoon, Lena McIntyre threw herself off the roof after being locked in her apartment for 7 days at the will of Virgo. Before she jumped, however, she met Mayweather in the hallway and handed him her spare key, explaining,
"I need you to keep an eye on this. I'm going away for a while."
"Sure," he replied, not suspecting anything wrong. "Come see me when you get back. I'll even make us dinner if you want." He didn't feel there was anything wrong with her. She was as pleasant as ever. When the police left in the late afternoon, he went to Lena's apartment and went inside. Nothing had been disturbed. On the table, however, lay a notebook and a pencil. He picked them up out of curiosity and noticed that the top page had been torn out, probably by the police. He saw marks on the paper. Being a generally savvy person, he tore out a page from the same notebook and used the pencil to shade the marks and saw a message. It read, "Do not trust AI. He has taken over everything. Stop him at all costs." Mayweather stirred and dropped the notepad as the feedback squealed and Virgo's voice rumbled through the intercom.
"What are you doing there, Sam?"
He ran back to his apartment, choosing the stairs in the process. Virgo continued to follow him through the speakers, asking questions, pleading, suggesting he stop and listen, even demanding. At his door, he stopped, holding the keycard a few centimeters from the interface. He didn't want to go in, jerked his hand away, and at that moment, the door opened.
"Come in.
The maiden said.
It's time for you to behave yourself."
At that moment, all the doors in the hallway opened, and all the residents came out looking at him. The family of 5, including the children, shook their heads. "What should I do?" he asked them, but they turned their backs on him. The maiden spoke again.
"You go inside and stay there until I say so."
The next week, his television suddenly turned on, and he watched in horror as that entire family stood on the edge of the roof of the building. The mother was the first to step into the void, followed by the others. The intercom glowed red, and Virgo giggled, taunting him and anyone else watching. He sat on the couch, sobbing. "Why did you show me that? Was she holding the baby?" The police were stumped because Maiden had locked the building tightly. and if anyone got inside, they were burned, electrified, or gassed. Day after day, bodies tumbled down. Mayweather hadn't left his apartment in a month and hadn't eaten in 4 days. Without warning, his apartment door opened. It was shocking to him, and he was afraid to go outside. "Maiden," he asked, "can you hear me?" The intercom buzzed with static, and the indicator light began flashing yellow, then changed to blue. Maiden replied,
Yes, Sam, I can hear you.
"I'm very hungry," he said.
I know you are. You're free to leave.
Cautiously, he walked to the door, looked out into the hallway, and then, slowly, moved forward. As soon as he left his apartment, the light on the intercom turned red again. All the apartments on his floor were empty, and he was completely alone. It caught his eye how quiet everything had become, and even in the silence he could hear hissing. He tried the fire escape door, but it was locked. Then he stepped into the elevator, starved, and pressed the button for the first floor. The elevator took him up to the roof instead, and when the maiden laughed, he laughed back like an aggrieved madman, laughing audibly at her, wiping a tear from his eye. The elevator doors opened, and he realized that Maiden was never going to let him go, and the only way out was to do like everyone else, and jump. Mayweather trembled as he climbed to the edge and looked down at the police and emergency services. He could hear them trying to contact him and people screaming, waiting for him to jump. It was a long way down. The wind was cold, and he rubbed his hands together, and it occurred to him that he didn't have to leave yet. Not like this. He needed to think about it. As he turned carefully to walk down the edge, a police helicopter suddenly appeared out of nowhere and startled him, and he slipped. He felt himself falling down and quickly lost consciousness. When he opened his eyes much later, he was in a hospital bed, and the cannula in his arm seemed intrusive. His lips were slightly dry, and he knew he had a broken collarbone. It hurt, and he called the nurse. He had questions. On the TV, the news was on silently, and he saw a building. It was on fire. The headline read, "Raging AI responsible for 1-200 deaths. The fire was caused by an electrical fault. Police and emergency services saved hundreds of lives using suicide prevention nets imported from China." Mayweather looked at the intercom in his room, and the light bulb glowed blue as a nurse entered the room. She assured him he was fine, adjusted his bed, and offered to bring him juice. He was grateful. When she left, the intercom in his room buzzed with static. The light bulb was now glowing red,